Hello there. Whilst on TikTok recently, I received a lot of positive feedback from my Resident Evil review. So much so that one message I received asked me if I'd consider reviewing any Silent Hill games. Well, why the heck not? What a great idea. So let's take a look at Silent Hill 2, the second game in the series, and see if it's worth your time today. Yes, this second foray into survival horror stars tall blonde bloke James Sunderland, who receives a letter from his deceased wife Mary asking him to meet him in their special place in Silent Hill. Blimey, he only nipped out for a pint of milk. Before he can even question whether Royal Mail have now expanded their operations into the afterlife to send and receive post, old Jammy decides to head back to Silent Hill and meet her. Silent Hill. I wonder if it's just like Gretna Green. Jimmy Hill. After arriving, James finds the town deserted apart from a few key characters and all the pubs are shut also, so he can't even go for a cheeky pint. However, he does bump into Kathy Bates' bird Angela, who warns him to stay away from the town.
Yeah, I'm looking for Silent Hill. Is this the right way?
Yeah. It's hard to see with this fog, but there's only the one road. You can't miss it.
Thanks.
But
Yes?
I think you'd better stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it.
Cheeky brat child Laura.
What's a little girl like you doing here anyway?
Huh? Are you blind or something?
What's that letter?
None of your business.
And fit bird Maria, who he meets in the park, who looks exactly like Mary. Top work, Jammy bloke. Get in there, my son.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it.
Now, I'm pretty sure that if I say survival horror, most of you will automatically think Resident Evil. I mean, it pretty much helped establish the genre, and the game's mix of action, puzzling and mutated creatures were a definite highlight back in the day. Silent Hill games, though, have always approached survival horror from a unique angle. The main protagonists either find themselves going to the town intentionally or not, and always end up trapped there in their own personal hell. The problem is Silent Hill, the town, is always changing. It's like a chameleon. As the person in there makes progress, it always offers up dark psychological terror with its enemies, disturbing images, puzzles and visceral gore designed to punish whoever the town chooses to bring into it. Think Jacob's Ladder crossed with an episode of EastEnders. Now, on the surface, Silent Hill 2 can seem a bit like a Challenge Annika Crystal Maze fetch quest type situation, as you run around Silent Hill using the town map, which clues you in on where to go. Most of the time though, poor Jammy will try and progress through the town only to find his route is constantly blocked and the areas he needs to go can't be reached until he visits certain key locations. It can feel a bit dull. Stick with it though, as although it's about as exciting as my Uncle Barry in real, you start to realise that all these little annoying eccentricities are actually part of the massive story arc, and the further you get, the structure of the game actually starts to click and it does become a lot more enjoyable. You can't really play this and expect a typical Resident Evil experience. Running around the various locations, which include a park, 2 creepy apartment blocks and a hospital, you won't really find that much difference in the enemy types. They tend to be inside out creatures, mannequin parts or nurses who have all had a dodgy kebab and will either spew on James or attack him with their limbs or weapons. The lack of varying enemies again is purposeful and exists to provide James with a personal, visual, psychological representation of pain and suffering. Blimey, I sound like Sigmund Freud. This same theme is reflected in the characters that James encounters. They all seem to have their own issues and pain, with a few characters playing hot and cold by dropping hints about James's wife Mary and then verbally trashing him, forcing him to stay and try and figure out just what the hell is going on.
Laura?
Huh? You know my name?
Eddie told me.
That big fat blabbermouth.
How do you know about Mary?
What's the big deal?
Why can't you just tell me?
You gonna yell at me if I don't?
No, I won't.
friends with Mary. We met at the hospital. It was last year.
You liar! Laura,
Fine, don't believe.
The game's atmosphere is very unsettling. Never before has a horror game made me not want to play it. And this isn't because it's bad, it's just that Silent Hill 2 goes out of its way to freak you out as much as possible by throwing in little jump scares, keeping you in the dark and using its environment to make you feel uneasy about even entering a room, not knowing what you're going to find. So Silent Hill 2 not only forces you to see some really horrific things, but also it's what you don't see that may disturb you the most. Luckily, old Jammy can collect a few weapons and lots of health to help him on his way, and the game is at least generous on having said items sometimes just lying around in plain sight. However, to give him the best advantage, you can search each room and area as thoroughly as you can, sometimes going off the beaten path. Doing this can net you big rewards, as that you just never know where these items are. The combat, however, is a little bit hit and miss with me. Whilst James can use weapons against the hordes of NHS nurses and creatures, you're best off just running away from them most of the time. Using the plank and steel pipe are pretty much redundant, and the hit detection is terrible as you can't always hit the enemies, and James swings these weapons so slowly. Also, the enemies can be pretty cheap when this happens too. You're better off with a handgun, shotgun or rifle, but trust me when I say that James is no Jill Valentine. He can't quick turn and can only shoot one target at a time, so shooting enemies should really only be used when you're blocked in tight areas. It's a bit awkward to say the least. However, this I believe was a purposeful decision by Konami. James has no experience with guns, he's not combat tested, and so in a roundabout way I can kind of see why the shooting mechanics in general combat were implemented in this way. Honestly, save your ammo for the most part and run away when you can. One thing James won't be able to escape from are the boss encounters that occur in key moments as you make swift progress. You'll be fighting a PG Tips pyramid bag head bloke, or Harold to his friends, who welds a massive blade. Whatever the heck these creatures on hooks are, a monster with a door on his back and Big Bloke Eddie. All are unique, interesting, and just like that train ride to Wolverhampton, you will have to fight in some confined spaces to get out alive. Graphically, Silent Hill 2 is stunning. The character models are highly detailed, and Konami used motion captured actors, which was an extremely big deal back in the day. Every nuance and facial expression adds to the authenticity of the game, and at the time of this video it's 2022, but back in the early 2000s this blew my mind. Silent Hill itself is just as it was in the first game, with the town drowning in fog, but also expands its list of locations, which, just like a Michael Bolton concert, freaks me the hell out. Everything that's included, such as the bowling alley, hospital, apartment blocks, prison areas and hotel, are purposely designed to alarm the player, especially when the architecture of the location can suddenly change, with doors suddenly being made out of skin, blood-stained areas and rooms which seemingly have no purpose than to cause alarm and distress. Everything looked so clean and filtered, with seemingly a lot of thought gone into trying to make each area feel unique. The camera also does a good job of conveying the action. Rather than just using a fixed perspective, Silent Hill 2 is much more free roaming and will on occasion change to accommodate when James is inside. This means that most of the time you won't be able to see the enemies right away, but at the same time you are not at all restricted by your environment, and this does make exploring much more bearable. The controls themselves are decent enough when controlling James, but I do take issue with the inventory screen. Maybe I've been spoiled by Resident Evil, but pressing start takes you to the inventory screen. Here you can cycle through your list of items, weapons and puzzle pieces. Now, no matter what, whenever you go into the screen, you will always arrive on the last item that you used. For example, if you used a health drink, then it will bring up the health drink. Simple, right? Because I was so used to Resident Evil, I would press start again when I was on the screen, thinking that this would exit, but would accidentally use another health drink. So you have to know to make sure that you always highlight another item other than the one you want to use, or exit using triangle. Also, combining items is an absolute mess. Thank God you only have to do it a few times. but you think you could just combine one item after another. However, this is what you have to do. You have to select an item, press combined, and rather than just to be able to immediately combine it with something else, nothing happens. I then have to deselect the item by pressing triangle, which kind of looks like it cancels this progress, and only then can I put these items together. It's a pain. Not a game breaker, but again, thank God you only have to do this like 2 or 3 times. It's super annoying. Still, please don't let these little niggles I have with this game put you off. Silent Hill 2 is absolutely incredible. It's a masterpiece and has been very cleverly crafted to take you on a journey to the deepest, darkest realms of psychological horror. The music and sound effects are so on point and wholly appropriate. Yes, it can feel like a bit... The music and sound effects are just so on point and wholly appropriate. Yes, it can feel a bit pointless running around in the dark chasing clues, but once you get into the swing of things it all starts to make sense and the strong story arc kicks in. Things get more twisted and confusing the further you push on, but trust me when I say this is truly where the game shines the most. Silent Hill 2 will confuse, distress and throw many hellish environments, jump scares, puzzles and horrific scenes at you. Yet the addictive nature of the game draws you in, wanting you to fight through the making you want to fight through to the end to figure out just what is going on. So if you're looking for an alternative to Resident Evil or many of the other survival horror games out there, then I really feel that Silent Hill 2 is the best way to go. While it lacks in enemies and all the bells and whistles of most games in this genre, it makes up for and gives the player one hell of a psychologically disturbing experience and dares to be different, and this is exactly why it stands out. So yeah, check it out and play it any way that you can. Well, unlike Jamie, who has Maria, the most romantic thing I'll have in my ear tonight will be a Johnson's Baby Bud. I'll see you next time for some more Retro Pap.